Here
Farage
Starmer is
just
watching his
declared
political
victory.
base
And the
crumble in
terrifying
real
part,
time.
if he's
A traditional
right,
Labour
British
town is
politics
now turning
as
to
we know
Nigel
it is
Farage's
over.
Reform UK
Because
party,
what he
and
said
they're
yesterday
furious about
wasn't
one
just
specific
political
thing,
rhetoric.
the
It
Prime
wasn't
Minister
campaign
cancelling
bluster.
a crucial vote.
It was a statement
We're
of
talking
fact.
about voters who've
Reform
supported
is
Labour
now the
for
home
generations,
for all
now saying
conservative-minded
enough is
people.
enough and
Not
jumping
some
ship to the
conservatives,
populist
not
right.
most
This
conservatives.
could be the canary in the
all.
coal mine for
And
Labour's
then he
entire
dropped this
electoral
line.
strategy.
The
Let's break
turquoise
down what's
tsunami is
happening.
coming.
So here's the
Turquoise,
situation that's got
Reform
Labour
UK's
strategists
color, a
absolutely
tsunami.
panicking.
That's
A
not the
Labour
language of
stronghold.
opposition.
We're talking
That's
about a
the
town
language
that's
of
voted red
inevitability.
for decades,
So
is
is he
experiencing a
delusional?
dramatic
Is this
shift
just
toward
Farage
Reform
being
UK,
Farage,
and the
always
catalyst,
overselling,
Starmer
always
cancelling a
overpromising?
vote that
Or
these
has he actually
communities
seen
desperately
something
wanted.
in the data that
Now,
the
the
rest of us are
specifics
about
of
to
which
witness?
vote was canceled
Let
matter,
me break down what
but
Farage
matters
is
more
actually
is what
saying
this
here, because
represents.
it's big.
These aren't swing
He's not
voters
claiming
or
Reform UK is
conservative-leaning
doing
moderates.
well. He's
These
not claiming
are
they're
Labour's
gaining
core
support.
supporters, the
He's
working-class
claiming
communities
they've won
that
the
Labour
battle
was
for the
literally
conservative
founded
movement
to
in Britain.
represent.
Past
And they're
tense,
saying, we
done,
want change
over.
now.
Reform
but they're not
is
asking
now
Labour
the home
for it
for
anymore.
all
They're turning to
conservative-minded people.
reform.
That's a
For those
declaration.
unfamiliar
He's
with
saying
UK
if you
politics,
have conservative
Reform
values
UK
in Britain,
is Nigel
lower
Farage's
taxes,
party,
controlled
the
immigration,
populist,
traditional values,
anti-establishment,
skepticism of
immigration-focused party
institutions,
that's been
your
siphoning
political
votes
home
from both
isn't
Labour
the
and
Conservative
the
Party
Conservatives.
anymore. It's
They're the
Reform
political
UK.
equivalent of
And
throwing
the
a brick
turquoise
through the
tsunami,
window of the
that's not
establishment.
just growth,
And now
that's
Labour
domination.
voters are
A
picking up
tsunami
those
doesn't
bricks.
ask for speed.
This is
It
Labour's
doesn't compete
worst
for
nightmare
territory.
come to life.
It destroys
Let's
everything in
understand
its
what's
path and
driving this
reshapes the
rebellion,
landscape.
because it's not
But
just
here's
about
what makes
one
this
cancelled
statement
vote.
genuinely
It's about
dangerous.
a feeling,
And I
a
mean that
growing
for
sense
both major
among
parties.
traditional Labour
Farage
voters that
isn't
their
trying to
party has
convince people
abandoned them.
anymore.
Think about it
He's
from their
moved
perspective.
past persuasion.
You voted Labour
He's
your
at
whole life.
consolidation.
Your parents
And
voted
if you
Labour.
understand
Your
that shift
grandparents voted
from
Labour.
vote for
The
us
party
because
was
we're
built
better
for people
to
like
you already belong to
working-class
us,
folks
you just
who
haven't
needed someone
realized
to
it yet,
fight for better wages,
you understand
better
why
housing,
the Conservative
better
Party
public services.
might actually be
But now,
finished.
Now
Let's
Labour
look at what's
feels like
actually
it's run by
happening to the
London
Conservative
elites
Party right
who care
now.
more about
They're not just
identity
losing
politics
elections,
and
they're
global
losing
issues
identity.
than the fact that your
What does the
town's high
Conservative
street
Party
is dead,
stand for in
your
2026?
wages haven't kept up with
Seriously,
inflation,
what?
and immigration
Lower
has completely
taxes?
changed
They
your
raised them
community
to
in
record
ways
levels in
nobody
government.
asked you
Controlled
about.
immigration,
Whether that
net
perception is
migration
fair
hit
is
all-time
debatable,
highs
but
under them.
perception is
Traditional
reality
values,
in politics.
they spent
And the
years fighting
perception
culture
among
wars
these
they kept
voters is
losing.
clear.
Standing
Labour
up to the
doesn't
EU,
represent
they
us
negotiated
anymore.
the Brexit
So when
deal
Starmer
everyone
cancels
hates.
a vote,
The
particularly
Conservative
one
Party
that
has
these
lost
communities cared
credibility
about,
on almost
it's not
every
just a
issue
procedural
conservative voters
decision.
care about.
It's confirmation
And Farage?
of everything
Farage
they
has been
already
consistent
suspected.
on all of
See?
them for
They don't
25
listen.
years.
They don't care.
And here's the
They're
part
just
conservative
like all the
HQ
rest.
doesn't
And
want
along
said
comes
out loud.
Reform UK
The
saying,
reform
we
doesn't
hear
need to
you.
win
We'll
power to
fight for
destroy
you.
them.
We
It
want
just needs
change
to
now,
exist.
not in
And
5
when
years
senior
after
figures keep
another commission
defecting to
studies
reform,
the issue.
Nazim
Now
Zahawi,
let's talk
others
about
considering
Reform
it,
UK for a
MPs
second,
whispering about
because
it,
their
the
rise is
dam
one of
is
the most
breaking.
significant
Now
political
let's talk
developments
about the
in modern
tsunami
British
claim,
politics.
because Farage
Nigel
doesn't
Farage
use
is a
language
political
carelessly.
survivor.
He could have said
pushed for
wave, he could have
Brexit,
said
achieved
surge,
it,
he could have
and
said
now he's
movement. He
repositioned
said
his party as the
tsunami.
voice of the
That's
forgotten
what Farage
British
is
working
predicting.
class,
Not just
and it's
Reform
working.
UK winning an election.
Reform's messaging
Reform
is simple
UK
and powerful.
replacing the
The
Conservative
establishment
Party
has
as the
failed you.
permanent
Labour
party of the
abandoned
right.
you.
And
The
here's the
Conservatives
thing that
betrayed
conditions
you.
for that are
We're the
actually
only
in
ones
place.
who actually
First past
fight
the
for real
post-electoral
change.
system
They're
punishes
talking about
divided
immigration
parties. If
control,
the right-wing
about
vote
putting
splits
British
between
workers
conservatives
first,
and reform,
about
both
slashing
lose.
government waste,
So one
about
has to
standing
die
up
for
to
the
what
other
they
to
call
live.
woke
And
ideology.
right now,
And in
reform
these
is growing.
traditional Labour
Conservatives are
towns,
shrinking.
that message
The
is
trajectory
resonating
is
hard.
clear.
Here's
If this
the thing that
continues
should
for another
terrify
18
Labour.
to 24
Reform
months,
doesn't
by the
need to
next
win
election,
these seats to
Reform could
destroy
legitimately
Labour's
be the
chances
larger
nationally.
party on the
They
right.
just need to
And once
split
that
the vote
happens,
enough
the
that
Conservative
Conservatives
Party
slip
becomes
through the middle.
irrelevant.
It's the
Not
same
wounded,
dynamic
not
that plagued the
struggling,
Conservatives when
extinct.
UKIP was at its
So
peak.
let's actually
And the irony?
examine whether
Labour
Faraj's
used to
claim is
benefit
true.
from this when
Is
reform
Reform
split the
UK
right-wing
really
vote.
the home for
Now
all
they're experiencing
conservative-minded
it
people?
from the other side,
Immigration
and they're learning
skeptics?
how
Absolutely.
devastating it can
Reform
be.
owns
The
that
phrase
issue.
"day of
Brexit
reckoning" isn't
hardliners?
just dramatic
Obviously.
language.
Farage
It's an
is
accurate
Brexit.
description of what
Tax cutters?
Starmer is facing.
Reform promises low
Every
taxes
political
with
leader
no
has
record
to
of breaking
eventually
that
confront
promise
the
yet.
gap between
Culture
what they
war
promised
fighters?
and what they
Reform is
delivered. For
explicitly
Starmer, that
anti-woke,
day is coming
anti-establishment.
fast. He promised
Traditionalists?
change.
Reform
He
presents
promised
itself
competence.
as defending
He
British
promised
values.
a government that would
So
deliver for
what
working
conservative
people. But
constituency
canceling
doesn't
votes?
fit in Reform
That
UK?
looks like classic
One
political
Nation
cowardice.
conservatives who
It looks
believe
like
in
he's afraid of
compassionate
democracy when
conservatism,
it might go
maybe,
against him. It
Business
looks like the
conservatives
same
worried
old
about
political
economic
games
stability?
that voters are
Possibly.
sick of.
But
And in
those voters
politics,
are a
once you
minority of
lose
the
trust,
conservative
it's
movement
almost
now.
impossible
The
to get
energy,
it
the
back.
passion, the
These
growth
labor
on the
towns
right,
aren't
it's
just
all with
expressing
Farage's
frustration.
brand of
They're
conservatism.
actively looking
So
for
when he
alternatives.
says all
That's a
conservative-minded
completely
people,
different level
he's
of
not
political
claiming
danger.
100%
The
of
really
people who
scary
ever
part
voted
for labor,
conservative.
this
He's
isn't
claiming
happening in
everyone
isolation.
who currently
We've already covered
identifies as an
Starmer
active
facing
conservative,
revolts over
and the
asylum
data
seeker housing
supports him.
and Treasury
But
job
here's
cuts.
the really
This is
interesting
part of a
part that
pattern.
nobody's talking
Labor's
about.
coalition
This
is
is great
fracturing
for
across
labor.
multiple
Why?
issues
Because a
simultaneously.
strong Reform
You can
UK
survive
splits
one
the right-wing
rebellion.
vote.
You can
In
weather one
2024,
controversy.
Labor won a
But when your core
landslide with
voters
only
are
34%
abandoning
of
you
the
on
vote.
multiple
How?
fronts,
Because
that's
the conservative
existential.
vote collapsed and
What
split
we're
with
witnessing
Reform.
is
If
potentially a
Farage is right,
fundamental
if Reform
realignment
becomes
of
the
British
dominant
politics.
party on the right,
The old
the
Labour-Conservative
conservative vote doesn't
binary
just
might be
split,
breaking
it
down into something
disappears.
more
And in a
complex.
first past
You've
the
got
post
socially
system,
progressive,
that means Labor
economically
wins
centrist
forever.
labor voters
Not
in
because
cities.
Labor is
You've
popular,
got
not
traditional
because Labor has
working-class
good
labor voters
policies,
in towns.
because the
Those two
opposition
groups
is
want
divided.
very different
This
things
is
from
Canada in
government, and
1993.
Labour is
The
trying to keep
progressive
them both
conservatives
happy.
collapsed.
It's not
The
working.
right wing split between
Meanwhile,
Reform Party
Reform
and
UK
progressive
is offering
conservatives,
those
and the
working-class
Liberals
voters what
dominated
Labour
for a
won't:
generation.
validation.
That's what Farage
They're
is setting
saying
up,
your
and Labor
concerns
should
about
be
immigration
thrilled.
are valid.
But let's
Your
be fair.
frustration
Is
with
there a
change is
scenario where
valid.
Farage
Your
is wrong?
feeling that nobody
Yes,
listens to
if the
you is
Conservatives
valid.
and Reform
Labour's
merge or
response
make
has
a deal.
largely been to
If they
dismiss
create an
these
electoral
concerns or
pact,
try to
we won't run
educate
against
voters
you
on
here,
why they're
you don't
wrong
run
to
against
feel
us
this way.
here,
That's
then the
political
tsunami
suicide.
gets redirected.
You can't tell
Instead
voters
of
their
drowning
lived
both parties, they
experiences are
combine
invalid
forces and
and
actually
expect them to
compete with
keep
Labor.
supporting you.
That's the
So
only
we
way the
might be
Conservative
watching the
Party
birth
survives.
of a new political
and Farage
alignment
knows
where
it,
class-based
which is
voting
why
patterns
he's making
break down
statements like
entirely,
this. He's trying
replaced
to
by
make a merger
values-based
politically
coalitions.
impossible.
Urban
If he
progressives
convinces
versus
conservative voters that
working-class
Reform
populists.
is
And if
conservatism
that happens,
now, and the
Labour's
Tories
in
are
serious
fake,
trouble
then any
because
attempt
they're
to
losing
merge
the
looks like
Labour
the
part
Tories
of their voter
surrendering.
base.
Which, to be
Here's
fair,
what's at
it would
stake.
be.
If Labour
So
can't
here's
hold
what you need
these
to
traditional
understand about
strongholds,
Farage's statement.
their entire
Reform
electoral
is the
math
home for
collapses.
all
They
conservative-minded
need
people.
these seats.
The
They've
turquoise
counted on them
tsunami
for
is
generations.
coming.
Losing them to
That's
reform
not
doesn't
campaign
just
rhetoric.
cost
That's
seats.
not optimistic
It costs
spin.
Labour's
That's a
identity
man who's
as the
looked at the
party
numbers
of
and
working
sees
people.
the end game.
And once
The
that
Conservative
identity is
Party
gone,
is dying.
what's left?
They're not
What
reforming.
does Labour
They're not
stand
rebuilding.
for if not
They're
the working
dying.
class?
And Reform UK
So that's
isn't
the
just
crisis
winning
facing
converts,
Keir
they're
Starmer.
becoming
Labour
the right.
towns turning to
The
reform,
tsunami metaphor
voters
isn't about
demanding
votes.
change
It's
now,
about
and a
replacement.
prime minister who's
The
running out
danger
of
for
political
Britain,
capital
whether you
fast.
like Farage or
This
hate
could be
him,
the beginning
is that we're
of a
about
much
to watch
bigger
a
political
200-year-old
earthquake.
political
What do you
party
think?
disappear
Is this a temporary
and be replaced
protest
by
or a
something much
permanent
more radical,
realignment?
much
Drop
more
your thoughts in the
populist,
comments.
much less
And if you
tested.
want more
And the
coverage on
most
UK
dangerous
politics
part,
and these
the
developing
most
stories,
dangerous
hit that
part
subscribe
is that
button.
this
I'll
isn't
catch you
happening.
in the next one.